So good afternoon, everybody. I know it's a little bit early, but hey, I probably want to steal those extra 3 minutes so we can dive into this. Welcome to the session. It's really amazing to see so many people here, and thank you for attending today. My name is Christiaan Beek. I'm based in the Netherlands, as you can hear of my accent, but I was asked to do it in English, so no problem. We all understand English, so that will be an issue. And I have the pleasure to represent Rapid7 Labs. So just to know, it will be a product agnostic talk. So no products, no pitches. So because that's what I like. On a daily basis, I have the fortune to work with talented people that research exploits, cybercrime, nation states. And there's a few things I want to share with you today about what we observe. So what are some of the things we observe, and sometimes what really frustrates me as well. Like, I worked 20 plus years in this industry, and still we're doing stuff that's not right. So we just wrote a report. It's called the Ransomware Radar Report. And look, if you want to pass by, you can actually scan the QR code, get a copy of it. But imagine this year alone. 30 new ransomware groups. I thought 2023 was bad. Well, 2024 seems to look even worse. And what does that tell you? Like, I had a discussion yesterday with some of my colleagues. Like, imagine 30 new groups. It means, if I translate it in the right way, people are willing to risk to go to jail to make money. And it's increasing. Like, we did our half-year report, and since that half year, already 9 new groups or rebranding groups were surfacing. But if you have already 30 new groups on top of the other ones, sometimes we see like 70 groups active on a daily basis, trying to attack customers from us, customers from other vendors. I would say it's challenging. But if you have so many groups active, it also means that where they historically went for the big fish, like the big companies with the big revenues, that has gone. Like, if you can see over here, like even, so we scraped the underground forums where they sell access to those companies globally. It's a ransomware forum. You have to buy yourself into that to get that information and to actually sell or buy access. We scrape those forums and we use machine learning to say, like, okay, tell me what are the trends here. And one of the biggest trends we saw was that companies with a revenue of 5 million or 4.6 million euros, average 30, 40 employees, are definitely a target these days as well. So it's not about to scare you, but just to make you aware. So don't go to the ostrich policy of like stick your head in the ground. It's no longer like, hey, it's my neighbor's problem. No, it's everybody's problem. And it's just a matter of when. How seriously is it? Well, I'm running threat analytics, data analytics, so I love my data and especially visualizations. So these are like top 20 ransomware groups. And what I visualized over here is like, okay, they have those leak sites where they post victims. And one of the things you need to understand is that many people report on those leak sites, but actually you need to understand what is the data telling me. So let's go to the next slide. So over here, for example, something new starts. So it means we are talking about a new group. Somebody surfacing, somebody doing stuff. Over here, here's almost a straight line of attacks being reported. Why are they on the leak sites? Because those victims initially don't want to pay. So it's a forcing method of trying to get those people pay. On the other hand, if you see some gaps over here, it doesn't mean they're on vacation. It means probably that some of the victims they targeted immediately paid the ransom. So there can be gaps in those postings. And this is one of the methods or ways we use this in our labs to look at the data and with the context I just told you, looking for trends and how we can anticipate on these kind of activities. And Yes, we have some smart ways of using this data and even prioritize our detection alerts in the technology. So to make it even more precise, and I adjusted it just in the lunch break with the final numbers. So for today, almost 23 attacks, including attempts, will happen globally. 2.1 million US dollars will be paid to ransomware actors today. Based on the latest statistics, 32% of victims will pay, average 476K US dollars being paid in each ransomware attack. Sometimes I think I'm in the wrong business here. That's a huge paycheck each day, right? And if you think about like, hey, who is my pen testing team today? These ransomware groups are probably going to pen test your network. They're highly active. Now, we manage and actually monitor networks for our customers, and you engage with them, and when they are hit by ransomware, there actually are 3 different reactions we observe. And I visualize them in my next slide. These are the 3 stages of response I see almost weekly. Completely ignoring my previous slides here, like fine, nice graphics, Chris, nice data, I don't care. What I call the ostrich policy. That's mostly on Sunday morning when they realize their network is encrypted. Or somebody actually staring at the data and absolutely don't have the clue what it's telling him. Like the alerts are blinking on all the shiny tools and dashboards, but you don't know what to do with it. So, if you take like a high-level flow of attack with ransomware, these are kind of the 5 stages or 6 stages you have, right? A research of a target, the exploit is happening, they are in the network, and so on. I would say as an industry, security industry, we do pretty well in this space. 3 and 4, like endpoint security, that really has ramped up with using different technologies. Number 3, if you have your SIM or EDR kind of tooling, alerts from, hey, somebody's trying to do password spraying or trying to do Kerber roasting. Those kind of alerts we're picking up. I think where we have a challenge, not only as an industry, but also as customers or endpoint security defenders, SOCs, is this part. The exploitation with the initial access, where we see some worrisome trends happening, but also the research of targets. That game has changed. Like, I know, I see some more people here with some less hair, gray hair like me. We are from the days that port scanning was a thing, right? When you saw port scanning alerts in your SOC, we're just like, oh shoot, somebody's looking at me. That has completely changed if you take about the angle of OSINT, open source intelligence. So, how are people researching your network? Hey, ChatGPT, can you tell me? We see those commands happening. I think the company behind ChatGPT recently reported about this as well, where they saw threat actors actually asking these questions. Hey, can you tell me the industrial switches from this country or somewhere else, right? We don't see this. We don't see these queries. It's not visible to us. And I challenge you actually, if you go back today or tomorrow to your company, try it for your company. What can you find with the help of ChatGPT about your company? I love to use ChatGPT for Sinterklaas, our fest, to make little poems. I was like, hey, write me a poem for my mother-in-law and don't use the word witch and broom. Very useful. But you would be actually surprised about the information the technology already has. And cyber criminals are lazy. So there are different ways they can get OSINT about your network. Somebody heard about stealer logs? those stealers that are being found on computers. They steal credentials, cookies, all that kind of stuff. I recently did a research for, I think it was like 25 top Danish companies. They were actually noted on the stock exchange to see like, okay, what can I find the kind of information about these companies? I was surprised. So the average of 45 compromised employee accounts were discovered in these logs. The passwords were surprisingly weak. Like I said, from day one in the industry, you shout about like strong password policy and stuff like that. And still, if you see password 1 or test, come on, you're a sitting duck. The great thing as well from these stealer logs is, if you do some analysis on that data, you can actually find the products they are using. So we found credentials of single sign-on, or VPN access, or Active Directory. And piece by piece, actually, you're drawing that picture, completing the puzzle, and you know exactly where to attack. Especially if I have a VPN credential, that's phenomenal. It means I can log in and probably stay below the radar between all the other traffic. Remember my cycle, the steps for ransomware attack? Step 2, exploiting the target. We see a worrisome trend, and last year I presented about this as well here. I said like, hey, I see already a spike. Well, that spike became an iceberg this year. This list is not exclusive, it's way more, but definitely a trend around security appliances, network edge devices, has been surfacing and growing this year. And this is not about to shame the vendors here, it's really about making us aware. Like the devices that are supposed to secure our networks are being attacked. Why? Well, honestly, we pay the ransom. If we keep paying the ransom, it makes the ransomware actors rich, and from that money, they can actually afford to buy 0 days. There are plenty of 0-day brokers or researchers that say like, hey, a bug bounty program. Some ransomware groups have a bug bounty program. Like, hey, if you find a vulnerability in, let's say, Cisco, oh, we pay you 150K. They earn that back in one successful ransomware attack. It's that dynamic we need to understand. Like I showed you before, I love my graphics. So if you map out some of the top ransomware actors using vulnerabilities, you can actually see which ones are going after which type of devices. So you see the bigger here the group, the more vulnerabilities they are using towards certain services. The title of my presentation was like gone or toasted in 60 minutes. And this was really an attack we recently saw. A 0-day in a firewall product. And the firewall was nicely integrated with Active Directory. So once you are in the firewall or bypass the firewall, you're immediately in the Active Directory with sufficient rights. Then the actor elevated its privileges, and within 60 minutes, the VMware ESXi cluster was encrypted. Boom. And a crying customer. Honestly, they didn't have a chance. They didn't have a chance to respond, because the firewall is not designed for security. Well, to protect the outside from the inside or the inside to the outside, but not itself. So by having that 0-day, no alerting. And by the time some of the signals came through about network activity, VMware was encrypted. Honestly, this is the world record I've seen in ransomware attacks in my 20+ years. 60 minutes. So one of the things we do, and this is open source, and if you don't know this yet, I think it's always the best kept secret here in Rapid7, is Attacker KB. What is AttackerKB.com? It's a community-driven vulnerability database where we analyze vulnerabilities and give that free information. So, since very recently, we also are adding tags to our vulnerabilities. So, you can see if the US government has seen exploitation of this vulnerability. It's called CISA-CAF, that we mark it over here. The funny thing is, CISA is looking at us. If we report it as being exploited in the wild, then in the evening we see like, oh, it's on the CISA-CAF list. And then we're just like, yo, thank you, and then it's here. But also, for example, observed in ransomware attack. So if you have a shit list of CVEs reporting to you daily, and you think about like, which one I do need to prioritize, you can go here. Look up the CVE, you have all those tags, you can see it's exploited in the wild. Sometimes when it's really bad, we do a private analysis on this, which we also make available here in the system. But it's really our answer, it's really our, I would say, passion to help secure the world. And make this available for everybody who wants to use this information, and especially in prioritizing. And honestly, there is a difference between observed in ransomware, observed in nation state. Nation state is always after the fact. Somebody discovered some nation state activity, then did a root cause analysis and then, oh shoot, it was a 0-day. But the threat actor left already. Ransomware, no, that's really the ones you need to patch immediately. Those are the ones that are being abused every day. A little back to the network edge devices. 0 days. Firmware security by obscurity. Some vendors, and I shame a little bit here, is about like, hey, let's put some custom encryption on my firmware, and then I think my system is secure. Well, a bit of reverse engineering, take 1 or 2 days, you crack the code, done. It's not that difficult. And with all respect, these appliances have limited CPU, they don't have the latest Intel, they run out of memory, they run out of disk. We had so many cases where we saw a 0-day and we notified the customer and we asked for logs. Oh, sorry, the log was already retentioned and gone was the evidence. Well, exposure of management interfaces to the internet. Single point of failure. Hey, I don't think you have a spare switch or firewall on the shelf always. So it's a challenge we're facing. Also we as vendors, right? Like, it's also something we think about, like, how can we pick up signals from the network? Because these guys are at the edge, right? So there's nothing in front of there, mostly. Maybe a Cisco switch or something, or a router. But if you have a firewall, how can we actually detect signals from that device that might indicate vulnerabilities? That's a challenge we think about as well. And to be completely transparent, we don't have an answer yet, like many of us in the industry. It's something we think about, like, and what can we do about it, right? So if you really make the difference between, okay, who is attacking my network edge devices? Cyber criminals, quick access, want to make a quick buck. Nation state wants to stay long-term in your network, stay hidden. So that's why you see, like, okay, quick access, bypass security, hence the 60 minutes. They use an end day, which means like, hey, a vendor puts out a vulnerability. Oh, let's reverse that patch. Ah, I write an exploit. Nowadays, it's less than 2 days when they figured it out. And sometimes, yeah, they have the cash to buy a 0-day, but the risk for a cyber criminal is once you burn that 0-day, it's out in the public and it will be detected very quickly. Nation state, if they have 0 days, they want to keep that as long as possible hidden. That's why you see custom implants, all those things happening. Has anybody been active this week with FortiManager, the vulnerability? No? FortiManager last week? No? So that was an interesting one. We already saw a week before being officially reported activity in that space. And this is from a ransomware actor. These are actual logs from a threat actor that is scanning for Fortinet, FortiManagers, and Cisco devices for the vulnerabilities they have. And with all respect here, right? If your Fortinet credentials are test or test 1, 2, 3, 4, you're asking for it. So FortiManagers, for those who are not aware, that's your managing appliance, managing servers for managing your firewalls and switches. And you secure that with 1, 2, 3, 4 as a password, and your interface is connected to the internet. That's pretty poor. You don't even need a 0-day for that, right? But what I wanted to show here is that this actor is still active. And on a daily basis, we see actually an update from his open directory. So his OSINT is not very well. So we secretly scrape his directory every day at a time stamp. He is sleeping, we are awake. And actually what we do, we extract those logs, and then we notify victims around the world, different certs, to please secure and help them to actually stop being breaked in. So before I end my session, put MFA on everything. Multi-factor authentication. I shouldn't even say this, right? But so many times I see that the initial breach has happened because multi-factor authentication was not implemented or incorrect implemented. Somewhere hidden in the device, there was a policy that if you log in this one, then you end up in this group, and suddenly you have access to the crown jewels of this company's kingdom. Ransomware actors are pretty good nowadays. Where in the past everything was done in-house, they did everything themselves. No, it sounds ridiculous, but when I tell this, they outsource. They hire the best pen testers, they hire the best specialists. Especially recently I saw a post like, hey, if you are a VMware specialist, we love you, you get a percentage of the ransomware, come work for us. It sounds ridiculous, but it is, we're in that space at the moment. Because they can afford it. And please, please, if you have any network edge device on the outside of your network, make sure whatever I told you today, you can forget, not this one. Multi-factor authentication, please, do it. Attack surface management, popular term these days. What it means is know what is outside of your network, what is there, what is available, what sources are connecting to the internet. So if I talk about this FortiManager stuff, if you have one, do you know if your interface is connected to the internet, or did you safeguard it and it's actually not connected to the internet? Stuff like that. Yeah, and last but not least, I would say, yeah, proactive response, right? Like that's why we do stuff like Attacker KB. Make yourself aware of what's out there. So for example, you saw my screenshot of Attacker KB here. Let's go back for a moment. If you click on this one, you will get a list of all the vulnerabilities that are being observed in ransomware attacks. And that's not only based on the CISA-CAF list, it's also based on day-to-day observations from our IR team, my team, the intelligence team. So we keep populating that list. So if you want to have a list of, hey, those are the latest vulnerabilities abused by ransomware actors and actually match with what you are seeing in your network, that's one way to do it. You can also click on CISA-CAF, or hey, if you see that tag observed in nation state, you can click on that link and you get that whole list, and you can select from, hey, most recent, or anyways, you can filter it down. So use it. That's why we made it available for everybody. So, almost ending my talk. If you want to read more about the whole ransomware and some cool research we did in code similarity analysis and stuff like that, at our booth there's a QR sticker, but you can also find it on the internet, where you can download the ransomware radar report. It's some of the data over here. There's more actual data here, but that whole code similarity, code stuff, that's in here as well. Yesterday I posted up this post. honestly, I'm tired of this whole thing around threat actors are using AI. Well, with all respect, why would you invest months of work in developing models, training models, testing models, when you can use ChatGPT to create a perfect spear phishing email, right? It takes a heck of a lot of work to actually create some defensive evasion with ML/AI. So if you like to read about it, you can find it on Hacker Noon or go to my LinkedIn and you will find the post as well. It's one of the things I think about AI, and I created also something what I call the pyramid of pain, but then with pain, AI with capitals. It's a kind of hack on the old pyramid of pain where we think about IOCs and attacker techniques. I translated that to AI technology. Where do we need to focus on? Look, we need to embrace AI. We can't circumvent it anymore. But how securely are we using it? And how do we think about it? And honestly, if you see the amount of vulnerabilities in AI technology, oh my God, we're back to square one. Command injection, SQL injection, it's where I started 20 years ago. And just to wrap it up, and let it sink in for a moment. Ransomware is not a technology problem. It's a business, financial, society issue. And how can you play? What is your role in this? One of the things I would say, don't pay. And for the rest, it's up to you. Hey, thanks for your time. Time is precious. Again, thank you so much for attending my talk. And if you have any questions, I'm still here or at the Rapid7 stand to the end of the afternoon. So if you don't want to talk product, but intelligence, hey, always welcome. So thank you for that.